African region. I thank you for your kind attention.
Je remercie Madame.
I thank Ms. Diop for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Nigeria.
Mr. President, Mr. President, the Nigerian delegation congratulates you for assuming the presidency of the Security Council for this month and for initiating this important discussion on drug trafficking as a threat to international security, to cap 2 years of productive presence on the Security Council. We thank the Secretary General for his invaluable views and continuing efforts to tackle the problem. We also thank Mr. Antonio Maria Costa for his comprehensive statement and tenacity in the fight against drug trafficking. Mr. President, drug trafficking remains a major challenge to global peace and security. No country is totally immune from its devastating effects, and none can fight and win the anti-narcotic war alone, regardless of the size of the resources at its disposal. In Africa, illicit drug trafficking, cultivation, processing, and abuse are persistently on the rise and creating barriers to the continent's development efforts. International drug cartels outside the region are exploiting the under-resourced border enforcement capacities of some countries and turning them into transit routes for prohibited drugs. West Africa is most affected by the reprehensible activities of these drug cartels. The sub-region is fast becoming a major warehouse and transit for cocaine and other illicit drugs. The actions of these criminal syndicates constitute a major threat not only to the sub-region's fledgling democratic structures, but also to governance in general. Indeed, they constitute serious impediments to sub-regional efforts to promote human prosperity, wealth creation, economic development, rule of law, and peace building. Drug trafficking has led directly to increased violent crimes, small arms proliferation, human trafficking, corruption, money laundering, and political instability. Against this background, ECOWAS member states have demonstrated appreciable political will and commitment to fight the scourge. In December 2008, the West African Action Plan on Drugs was adopted in Abuja by heads of state and governments of ECOWAS as a major legal framework to complement existing mechanisms. The West African Coast Initiative to support the implementation of this action plan has also been launched in Vienna and in New York. The initiative recognizes the importance of partnerships for leveraging resources and for building national and regional capacities in the areas of law enforcement, forensics, intelligence, border management, money laundering, and the strengthening of criminal justice system. This initiative requires international support and gradual expansion beyond the pilot countries. At the national level, the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency has adopted a dual approach, drug supply control and drug demand control, to prevent the country from being used as a source, transit, and destination for narcotics. The agency is strengthening its institutional capacity, prosecutorial capability, and surveillance activities. Nigeria remains firmly committed to achieving the ultimate goal of ridding the country and the West African sub-region of the menace of drug trafficking. Nigeria is also committed to strengthening ties with its development partners and international community, especially with the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, Interpol, and the United Nations Office for West Africa. Nigeria believes that the problem of drug trafficking requires national, sub-regional and regional approaches. Thus, we will continue to work closely with the African Union, the Economic Community of West African States, and the Intergovernmental Action Group against money laundering in West Africa to tackle this problem. At the bilateral level, Nigeria is strengthening ties with several countries, including the United Kingdom, South Africa, and China, on drug control. Mr. President, in spite of these efforts, the international community must continue to pay close attention to developments in the West African region before the situation there escalates into an emergency. In the spirit of shared and common responsibility, Nigeria urges the international community to provide necessary assistance to states in the sub-region to build their capacities in order to respond more effectively to these challenges. Combating drug trafficking and related organized crime must be situated in the wider context of poverty eradication and human development, in line with the commitment undertaken in the Millennium Development Goals. Attention should also be paid to conflict prevention in the sub-region and the role played by the diaspora in the chain. Efforts should not be limited to cocaine and cannabis imported mainly from outside the continent, but to drugs produced locally. An urgent area of focus and capacity support should be the development of mechanisms for gathering and sharing information on organized criminal groups in the sub-region. Mr. President, let me assure you of Nigeria's overwhelming support for the presidential statement proposed by your delegation. We look forward to working closely with other delegations to implement existing frameworks. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Nigeria for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Cape Verde.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I wish at the outset to congratulate Burkina Faso, the UN Security Council presidency for the month of December, for having elected the issue of drug trafficking as a threat to international security as the topic of today's